Hello, and welcome back to Autistic After Hours. I'm your host, Ashra, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. I thought it would be really interesting and meaningful and impactful to ask all of you what being autistic feels like in your life, in your experience. So this episode is not so much going to be from me. It's more so a conglomeration of what all of you have shared with me about what your autistic experience feels like. And at the end, I will go ahead and share mine, but we will start off just going through statements from each of you about what being autistic feels like. It is completely anonymous, so you're not going to know who these statements are coming from, but I asked basically on Instagram for people to share with me if they wanted to be included. So you might hear yours mentioned. I did get probably thousands of responses, so I could only fit so many into this episode. I didn't go in and pick and choose. I just went with the first messages that I received in order. So this is not me picking which responses I liked best to share with you or anything like that. It's completely random. Like, I haven't even read these actually. I just am reading the first amount of responses that I received. I'm going to read as many as I can. And at the end, I'll share mine. Before we get into the episode, quick reminder to follow Autistic After Hours wherever you're listening, whether that is on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, and be sure to follow along on Instagram. We've got almost 70,000 followers on the podcast Instagram account, which is absolutely amazing, and I can't believe we're maybe gonna hit 100K at some point. I never even imagined that the podcast Instagram account would grow to that extent. I can't believe it, and I'm so grateful for all of you who find meaning in what I share. Next week, there's not gonna be a podcast episode. I'm gonna be traveling, and so I will not be making a podcast episode. However, there will be a vlog coming out on YouTube of my travel experience. I'm gonna take you on the trip with me. So if you wanna see a travel vlog with me and Nick, then be sure to follow along on YouTube, subscribe so you see that. But there will not be a podcast episode next week. This is the first time in over 100 episodes that I am skipping a week, but it is because the podcast episode is going to be replaced by a YouTube vlog. I just don't have the bandwidth to do both, and I really want to vlog the trip. So if you want to see that, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. It will be coming out next week. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. Being autistic feels like moving through life, experiencing it as raw perception rather than a fixed self. Being autistic feels like being constantly told that I don't fit in, even if no one has said that to me. Being autistic feels like living in a separate plane of reality. Being autistic feels like a perpetual foreigner, even in your own culture or country. Being autistic feels like I'm living behind a glass wall. Being autistic feels like being an alien no matter where you go, even around the people you're the closest to. Being autistic feels like I'm going to a band recital but being given the wrong sheet music. I can rely on the general skills I've learned up to this point to improvise, but everyone knows I'm missing something and I'm never quite in sync. Being autistic feels like I'm in the wrong planet. Being autistic feels like everyone is in on the inside joke except for you. Being autistic feels like I'm both smarter than and more stupid than everyone else. Being autistic feels like I'm out of phase with the rest of the world, and it's as beautiful as it is heartbreaking. Being autistic feels like I'm an alien in a human suit, just doing my best to live on Earth undetected. Being autistic feels like trying to play 5 different card games at once, but nobody you're playing with knows about the other 4 games, and you might lose if you tell them. Being autistic feels like being projected on by neurotypicals. Being autistic feels like I was sent to Earth to blend in, and I'm doing a sometimes stellar, sometimes really terrible job. Being autistic feels like being a criminal trying to plead guilty, but doesn't know why they're on trial. Being autistic feels like constantly having to justify your every action. Being autistic feels like everyone else got the rule book on how to be a human being, but you didn't, and then you slowly learn they don't even follow their own rules. Being autistic feels like having an extra layer to swim through so I can get out of my head. Being autistic sometimes feels like wearing someone else's skin suit all the time and then being dismissed when I say it's uncomfortable wearing someone else's skin. Being autistic feels like cosplaying the behavior of a human as if you're really an alien. Being autistic feels like you are stuck in a glass room and everyone else is roaming free. Being autistic feels like being the most intelligent person in the room and also the dumbest at the same time. Being autistic and socializing feels like being forced to attend a book club of a novel you've never read and have no idea what it's about and really don't care about. Being autistic feels like I'm constantly uncomfortable with my body and surroundings. Being autistic feels like everyone is in on a joke except for me. Being autistic sometimes feels like a never-ending queue of tasks that turn into a Jenga tower game session, except it's not fun at all and everything's falling apart no matter how careful I am. Being autistic feels like being an idiot genius. Being autistic feels like the world goes too fast. Being autistic feels like being that one whale that sings at a different frequency. Being autistic feels like being in Earth as an alien, but also an uber smart being and also the strangest being alive, and you're just a silly chill guy except you're very much not. Being autistic feels like I'm on the wrong planet and have to mirror behavior to fit in. Being autistic feels like performing on Broadway while being the only one that hasn't received the script. Being autistic feels like you just live in a different universe as everyone else at the same time. Being autistic feels like permanently living in a literal whirlwind of thoughts, feelings, colors, sounds, and sensations, equally beautiful and exhausting. Being autistic feels like most people will never truly try to understand me on a deeper level as I try to do so with them. Being autistic feels like living inside a kaleidoscope, but no one else is there with you. Being autistic feels like I'll forever be the only person who actually gets me. Hi guys, quick ad break. If you know me, you know that my first sign of sensory issues growing up was my sound sensitivity. I was constantly feeling overwhelmed by sound, and no one knew why or how to help me. I wish that back then I had access to the noise-canceling headphone technology that exists today. There are even noise-canceling headphones designed specifically for children. If you are a parent looking for sound sensitivity relief for your child, I highly recommend checking out iClever active noise-canceling headphones. They are over-ear headphones that utilize Bluetooth connection and offer a high degree of noise cancellation. iClever noise-canceling headphones offer up to 40 decibels of noise reduction and an immersive sound experience. They utilize both active and passive noise cancellation technology. They are comfortable, durable, and portable. If you are in need of sound protection for your child, head to the link in the description box of this episode to check out iClever noise-canceling headphones. I highly recommend them. Being autistic feels like speaking a dialect from another region and not being explicitly told when and why a word from that dialect is not a good choice when talking to locals and instead just getting side-eyed. Being autistic feels like being alone and an alien but having to deal with life in a human world. Being autistic feels like being an alien trying to mimic human interaction. Being autistic feels like you're not in on the joke. It feels like being the most special and boring person at the same time. It feels like confusion and constant navigating. It also feels like butterflies and rainbows, excitement for life, autistic joy, beautiful sky, pretty river, look at that fish. I love being autistic, and autism can feel like everything all at once. Being autistic feels like being a tiny person turning up the volume to random things in my brain at random times. Being autistic feels like being a human glitter bomb, so surprising, fun, and cutesy, but a chaotic mess when it explodes. Being autistic feels like I'm invisible to people, but sometimes it's a conscious choice and other times it's just people ignoring me because they're uncomfortable to deal with me. Being autistic feels like I'm a part of Skinner's box experiment and I'm one of the mice. Being autistic feels like always being wrong until you're proven right. Being autistic feels like constantly being put on a trial like the Salem witch trials. Being autistic feels like looking at everyone else through glass but not knowing if I'm on the right side. Being autistic feels like there's something wrong with you, but you'll never know what. Being autistic feels like seeing every color at once in a world of people that only believe in gray. Being autistic feels like being very aware of my body most of the time, like when you remember your breathing. Being autistic feels like being an outside observer of my own life. Being autistic feels like I'm swallowing dry pills with no water and I can't let anyone know I'm starting to choke. Being autistic sometimes feels like being a naked, raw nerve ending, somehow walking around. Being autistic feels like using a manual transition when everyone is standardized for automatic. Being autistic feels like speaking a foreign language. Being autistic feels like trying to play a game without knowing the rules. Being autistic feels like trying to write the world's most beautiful music while getting punched in the stomach. Being autistic feels like a lifelong journey of going back and forth about whether you're crazy or not. Being autistic feels like I'm always floating and I can hold my consciousness in multiple places simultaneously. I feel like an alien and like I'm living on an island alone because understanding people is hard and exhausting, so I choose solitude because it's easier. I've always felt alien. Being autistic feels like I'm running on a completely different operating system in a world that assumes I came with the default settings, and somehow I'm still the one expected to translate everything in real time. Being autistic feels like realizing mid-dream that you're dreaming, so you tell someone in said dream and they suddenly get really angry that you figured it out. Being autistic feels like being 10 steps ahead yet 20 steps behind at the same time. Being autistic feels like you're always running uphill, everything is harder. Being autistic feels like you're already absolutely alone in this world, but you see everything. Being autistic feels like having a toolbox full of everything we need to fix a problem, but it's padlocked and the key is in the toolbox. Being autistic feels like an out-of-body experience with a heightened element of self-awareness and with the limited or mismatched knowledge of how to do anything different. Being autistic feels like it's the chronic experience of living in a 5D reality when everyone around me is trapped in 3D, feeling too nuanced for this raw human existence. Being autistic feels like I'm not human. Being autistic feels like there are a million things being thrown at you, but you only have 2 hands to catch them. Being autistic feels like I'm doing everything wrong all the time. Being autistic feels like I have all of these thoughts and feelings and I try to put them into words and people say they understand, but they really don't understand the intensity behind them. There's no words to describe it other than it makes sense that a lot of autistic people feel like they don't belong as part of this world. Being autistic feels like I'm stuck inside a glass tube looking out, but nobody knows I'm in the glass tube, so they're confused about why I can't keep up or participate like they can. Being autistic feels like being the last unicorn until I found all the other unicorns and they're autistic too. Being autistic feels like being on a stage naked and you forgot your lines, so you try to improvise to play it off for the audience's comfort until you finally realize that you have the option to quit and walk off the stage. Being autistic feels like everyone got a guidebook at birth and you didn't. Being autistic feels like everyone got the memo except me. Being autistic feels like playing a board game but you don't know any of the rules. Being autistic feels complicated, confusing, tiring, lonely, and joyful. Being autistic feels like seeing a whole spectrum of color nobody else believes you is there and tells you that you're wrong. Being autistic feels like being at a birthday party and not knowing whose birthday it is. I know I should be celebrating. I want to be connecting. It's scary not being able to do both in the ways that I'm seeing it around me. Plot twist, it's my birthday. How weird. Being autistic feels like being an alien stranded on a planet with no handbook and no one explaining how you'll survive. Being autistic feels like the world has a huge inside joke that you don't understand. Being autistic feels like everyone around you speaks a secret language you have to decode all of the time and get punished for not understanding. Being autistic feels like having constant stage fright. Being autistic feels like you're constantly left out of a secret everyone is in on. Being autistic feels like cosplaying as a person. Being autistic feels like I really want to answer this question and say something useful for your podcast, but I'm second-guessing responding. Being autistic feels like a roller coaster. Being autistic feels like trying so hard to be a human but feeling more like an alien. Being autistic feels like magic when I'm alone and a curse when I'm around neurotypicals. Being autistic feels like having access to a deep and intuitive whimsy that wants the right conditions to come out and thrive. Being autistic feels like a crossroad of two bridges, one that makes you feel you can't do the activity you had in mind and you can do it without restriction. Being autistic feels like having a hard time finding only one sentence to contribute about how it feels to be autistic. Being autistic feels like feeling everything and nothing at the same time. Being undiagnosed autistic feels like living your entire life knowing that something is wrong with you, but always being one step away from understanding what it is, while also feeling like everyone else knows the answer, but that they choose to keep it a secret from you. Being autistic feels like getting talked over all the time, like never fully being seen or understood, or like it's too much of a hassle to try. Being autistic feels like being an already used matchstick put back in a box and someone trying to use you and expect you to light. Being autistic feels like being forever foreign, even though you mean well and you try to learn to be locals or allistics, your words and actions will always be translated differently. Being autistic feels like I'm doing improv in a play that I didn't even know I was in. Being autistic feels like everyone else has a self-driving car, but you're stuck with a manual and the clutch keeps moving places. Being autistic feels like being born without the instruction manual that everybody else seems to have been given at birth. being autistic can feel like you understand more than the people around you, while at the same time, they seem to believe they understand more than you do. Being autistic feels like you're stuck in a carbonated drink, but no one else feels and hears the bubbles throwing you around, popping except you. Being autistic feels like everyone around me knows the rules and doesn't care about them, but I care about knowing the rules, but don't actually know them. Being autistic feels like something is written on your forehead that everyone can see but you. Being autistic feels like you're constantly doing something wrong. Being autistic feels like constantly being misunderstood and being unable to communicate your own internal clarity. Being autistic feels like your brain runs on a different operating system. And lastly, my contribution. Being autistic in this world feels like trying to mix vinegar into a pool of oil, unable to homogenize, a depth of separation and isolation unquellable by any magnitude of force or connection. Thank you all so much for contributing. Thank you for listening. As always, remember, autistic adults exist. We deserve awareness, support, community, and acceptance. And I'm so grateful that you're here. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.